Today we are focusing on exploring careers. A great way to start the week by thinking about exploring careers. And I'm going to run through very quickly a whole range of sort of resources that might be helpful for you. I am Dr. Joseph Barber. I'm one of the team leads here at Career Services, focusing on graduate students and postdocs. This entire week of workshops is for graduate students and postdocs, and so I'm going to highlight resources that are very specific to this population across disciplines, obviously. This is part of a week-long set of workshops that cover all the different stages of the job search process, starting with exploration, ending with negotiation. Hopefully, you walk through every stage that might be relevant to you as part of this process. Exploration really does start off with a solid foundation for the rest of the things that we're doing. So we're going to cover that aspect as we go through here. What are we going to do today in terms of what you can get out of this? Well, hopefully what you'll see from what I go through is that career exploration looks different for different people, depending on where you are in the process, depending on what your goals are, depending on many factors. Some of the elements stay the same, and we're going to cover those core factors that are going to be important for you. But hopefully what you'll walk away with today is a sense of a strategy, things that you can use to be effective in your career exploration. Those next steps are sometimes hard. It's overwhelming when you're thinking about all the careers that are out there and what you can do about that. So I hopefully want to give you some sort of confidence to move forward in a strategic way. I am going to give you lots and lots of resources to sort of explore. These are resources that sometimes our office, Career Services, subscribes to. So students have access to free. Some of these are resources beyond the walls of Penn that you can access for free as well. What we find is that many students are not taking advantage, probably because they don't know yet, of how these resources can be helpful in your process. So I really want to make sure that you get some idea about how effective these resources are and what you can do to integrate them into your job search process. And then obviously, what I'm going to cover today is very general, high level. It's going to cross different degrees at the graduate level, different disciplines. And so we do encourage you at some point in your exploration to meet one-on-one with an advisor here at Career Services so that we can talk through your particular goals, your questions, and help you develop a strategy that works for you. So whatever team that you would see at Career Services, at some point check in and say, I'd love to chat more about exploration strategies and what that looks like. And hopefully that will be helpful for you. So what is career exploration, right? It's good to start off with a general overview of what this is. The way that, one of the ways that I think you can look at it is a way to match the things that you do well and the interests that you have with possible career paths that are out there for you. Obviously, doing a career that values your knowledge and your skills is going to be a great fit for you. It's going to make you feel, accomplished and make you feel very satisfied that you can do this on a day-to-day basis. Exploration can happen even within a career field. So if you do want to go on to be a faculty member, you can do career exploration within academia. If you want to go in to do industry or consulting, you can explore within those career fields, between different organizations, between their goals, between their cultures. But obviously, in general terms, you can look at all of these different options out there to help you sort of figure out where a good sort of focus might be for your career path. And so that's part of exploration, is to help you develop a career path that's going to be helpful for you so that you can really feel confident that your next steps are being helpful, as opposed to sometimes feeling lost. It's a bit ironic to feel lost during career exploration because it's about finding things, but sometimes I think people do feel lost in this process because it can feel overwhelming. Now, this is just one example of a career exploration roadmap, and I feel that the authors here have really clearly stated some of the steps that you can take, but it feels and looks very intimidating sometimes because there's lots of paths and wiggly lines and everything. At its core, though, you'll see that there are some areas of focus, right? You start off here with self-assessment. Don't worry about all the steps here. I'm not going to go through this. I'm just going to give you this as an example of some of the methods or some of the approaches and models that are out there. That self-assessment, I think, is going to be a fundamental to help making sure that you have a solid career exploration approach. You need to know yourself and your interests and your skills in order to explore effectively. And so that's what we're going to sort of be touching on today. And then this is this idea of reflecting on the options that you're seeing and getting involved in them and reassessing them based on what you know, and then creating a plan and implementing that. So again, this is a model. I've provided the link in that list of links that I shared in the chat, so you can see those. At Career Services, we sort of boiled this down into a sort of a four-step process, which I feel is much less intimidating and scary. Obviously, we've grouped together this reflect and explore into one category. But this sort of top half of this cycle, the reflect and explore and the network and gather information, really both of those are explorations in different forms. One is sort of looking inward and one is sort of looking outward in terms of the networking. But that's really where the most of the work in terms of exploration happens, and where we want you to sort of focus your attention as you're thinking about what career options look like for you moving forward. So that's where we'll be focusing our attention today. At the heart of it, there are some fairly simple career exploration questions that you can ask yourself. And I've highlighted the one here that's probably, and sometimes the hardest question to answer, what do I want to do? It's what sometimes people ask you. What are you going to do with your master's degree? What are you going to do with your PhD or your postdoc? For some of you, you possibly haven't had to answer this question yet. You followed the academic path and you've done your research, and you haven't necessarily formulated an idea about what comes next. And so that can feel a little bit overwhelming sometimes, and that's where the sort of exploration approach is going to be helpful. But all of these other questions are great questions to be asking yourself, reflecting on those questions yourself. Sometimes reflecting with other people is really helpful. Getting out of your own head is always going to be beneficial. But the what do I want to do is something that we can sort of begin to think about based on knowing yourself a little better. So what we're trying to cover here then with this idea of career exploration is that it's an opportunity for you to do a couple of things. One is to say, here's what I do well. Who values that, right? Which types of roles out there want the skills and knowledge that I have? The flip side to that is to say, well, here's the job that I think I want. What skills do they need? And how can I gain those skills or develop that knowledge so that I'm going to be a viable candidate for that role, right? So if you decide, for example, that you want to be a consultant, most students have no consulting experience to a certain extent. What do you need to do that, right? So you need to explore that field to understand the skills and the experiences that are valuable. If you are a researcher and you say, I want to do this type of research, I want to do ethnographic research, I want to understand, the different experiences that different cultures have, who values that type of skill, right? It's another type of exploration that's out there. The outcome of exploring options is that you have to sort of make a little bit of a decision about which of those options you want to invest most of your time, because different fields, different industries value different types of experiences. If you are considering going into the faculty career path, obviously a faculty search committee is interested in your publications and your funding, and those things are important to gain along the way. But those publications and funding may not be very helpful if you're interested in a certain type of career beyond academia, whether it's a writing career or a research career or a consulting career or whatever that is. Those elements, they're not unhelpful. They're just not the things that are valued, because funding outside of academia, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. So you have to understand where you want to invest your time whilst you're doing your master's or your PhD and your postdoc, so that you're gaining skills and experiences that can be transferable to different career paths and different industries. And then once you do have a sort of a sense of what are some of those paths that might be most interesting to you, you need to make sure that you are investing your limited time, because with your work at Penn and your research and all the other things that are on your plate, you don't have a lot of spare time. So when you do get to use your time to sort of explore careers and develop professional skills, you really want to make sure that it's you're engaged in activities that are going to be most impactful to a future hiring committee or hiring manager. So that process is going to be important too. And I think some people have already experienced this, that making a decision about your future is hard, right? Whether it's making a decision about coming to graduate school or making a decision about what to do when you're coming towards the end of your program, it can feel hard. And so for some of these reasons, right, it's uncomfortable to sort of have to be put in a position where you have to make what seems like a final decision. Sometimes it feels rushed. You get to the end of your program and then you have to make a choice about what's next based on what's available to you. These are all perfectly natural experiences. And I think the process of exploration will make this process of making a decision much easier, because you'll be doing it in a much more strategic and thoughtful approach, right? So when you do get to choose a path that you've explored, you won't have doubts like this, because I think that's these are the doubts that sometimes creep into everyone's mind once they make a decision. Well, perhaps I should have made the other decision. These are sort of natural feelings. And I think to a certain extent, it's important to realize that they will come in certain degrees. But once you've invested into exploring a career path, you will be able to make your decisions much more confident. And you will realize that whatever path you choose, there's going to be value in it, right? If you approach a career path and know what's it's about, know the trajectory of those roles that you might be going into, know the culture of the organizations, know the skills that you can gain, whatever decision that you make, you can make the most of it as part of your own professional development. So there's never a wrong choice to a certain extent. There are different choices, and career exploration helps you make those much more effectively. So we're going to walk through some of these steps here just to give you a sense of what you can be doing as part of this exploration process, right? We're going to think about how you figure out what options are out there, and how you figure out who you are and what you want from this process, and then how you can use that to make decisions about your career next step. So do you actually always need to do career exploration, right? If you've come to this session, you're like, well, I know exactly what I want to do, which probably you wouldn't have come to the session if you do that. But even if you are in that position, I think having options to explore your career next steps is going to be critically important, because you need to have a really clear understanding of the landscape out there. The role that you might really want the most may not actually exist in sort of the settings that you want, in the geographical locations that you want, in the type of organization that you want. You need to know this ahead of time. Now, the other aspect of being a graduate student or a postdoc is that your professional and your personal lives begin to interconnect in more complex ways. If you have family, if you have a partner, there are decisions that you need to make to sort of help you align your career next steps so that you both have opportunities and your family is well situated to benefit from those opportunities moving forward. So knowing your options, knowing what those look like geographically, knowing whether there are some options that are going to promote a better work-life balance than others, these are all critically important aspects. Coming into your graduate program, you may have had one idea about what you wanted to do once you leave. Hope by the time that you finish your graduate program, you may have multiple new ideas about what you want to do with yourself, right? So you should always be open to exploring new ideas, because that's going to be helpful, because you are gaining new skills and new experiences all the time. And so what you thought you could do coming into your program may be very different from what you know you can do moving out of it. And you want to be aware of that and think about the career paths that are out there. So let's think now about sort of exploring you and exploring yourself and exploring the options that exist, right? And I'm going to run through some different resources that are out there. First of all, these are just a bunch of questions that I think are really helpful to ask yourself, but I think are even better when you ask someone, pair up with someone and ask them in your peer group, in your network, to reflect on these things. And the reason I think these are important is because usually what I find when I work with graduate students and postdocs is that people haven't taken the time or haven't had the time to sit down and really reflect about their skills and their abilities and their experiences. Many of you may have heard of, imposter syndrome as being, a common aspect of the graduate student experience or postdoc experience, where you don't think you have skills, that are transferable or that are effective, or you don't think you should be where you are right now. You don't have the credibility to do that, and that's really not the case at all. And oftentimes, what it comes down to is simply not having the time to reflect on all of the accomplishments and skills and knowledge that you actually do have and how you've used those things. So these types of questions here are really important because they really focus on the positive aspects of what you do well. The other aspect of academia is that it's a very critical feedback type of environment, right? Critical feedback is important, obviously, but positive feedback is even more important to help people be motivated and feel like they're accomplishing something professionally. And there's not a lot of positive reinforcement happening in the academic environment. So it's really important that you generate some of that positive feedback by being able to answer these questions moving forward. So again, I encourage you in your own time to sort of explore these questions, because they're very important parts of your self-assessment. Career Services also has a subscription to Career Explorer, right? So this is a free sort of self-assessment tool. It's not specific to graduate students or any particular population. It's available to everyone. It's on our website. I've included the link here. The link's in the list of links that I provided in the chat. I'm just going to put these in again just because new people have come. So you can go through this, and basically what this tool does is it helps you reflect on your skills and your abilities and your knowledge areas. And then it sort of transforms information that you give it into different ways of thinking about yourself, right? So the system doesn't tell you anything that you don't already know about yourself, but what's so helpful about it is the language that it uses to sort of say, well, actually, you are these types of things, right? So on my profile here, it tells me that I'm a groundbreaker, right? So groundbreaker could be all about innovation, it could be about creativity, it could be about comfort in sort of ambiguous situations or uncertainty. That's really helpful to know, because it's probably not something I would have used that, I wouldn't have used this term myself to describe my experiences or what I could bring. Having another entity say this is something that is relevant to you is actually really helpful to give me an idea about a new narrative that I can create for myself. So Career Explorer is something that I recommend that you take some time doing, just because it's free and available for you to do so. Once you've gone through the assessment, they sort of suggest some different roles that are out there. So you can see it on the bottom: professor, zoo educator. I have an animal behavior background, so it's not surprising there. Art teacher, I'm terrible at drawing, so that's a terrible one, but I'm, I am an adjunct professor somewhere else, so teaching is in my portfolio. And then they have these sort of reports there that you can sort of take a look at that help you think about these experiences and think about where they can be, right? So on the right-hand side, you're a groundbreaker. Read about what you naturally gravitate towards, your working styles and more. This is going to be so helpful as you think about where you can apply your knowledge in different types of settings. Now, Imagine PhD, given its name, is focused more on the PhD and postdoc population, but I'm going to suggest that anyone can actually use this because the tools are not specific to having a PhD, but it's a great tool for people in the social sciences and the humanities. It's custom made for that population. And it's a great tool because it combines a bit of self-assessment with a bit of exploration, but it also has an IDP, an individual development plan component to it. So if you're thinking about exploration as potentially a 1-year process, a 3-year process, a 5-year process, the individual development plan part of this tool can be really helpful to create a structured plan for you to move forward. So again, Imagine PhD is a free tool to use. You can sign up for that one. One of the first things that it will prompt you to do is to go through these career assessments that are out there, right? They are skills assessments, things that you do, interest assessments, things that you want to do, and values assessments, things that are important to you in terms of where you want to, be a professional and be part of that process. So here's just an example of some of the interest assessments, right? So it's a 1 to 5 scale. You run through what are your interests in doing these areas, right? So there are multiple sort of aspects of the interest that you can go through. This is the skills assessment, which is fun because you get to drag and drop things into boxes. I've never done this and I can do this well. So these are just research and analysis skills you could drag into these boxes. And you can see from the next slide here that along the top, all of the different competencies: oral, written, management, leadership, technical, professional, research. There are skills in all of those categories, and you can go ahead and drag them into these boxes. Now, again, oftentimes when I see people do this, they tend to skew their dragging to the left-hand side. I need more experience. I haven't done this as much. And I often have conversations with people encouraging them to think more positively about what goes in the right-hand side, because those are things that you can build on more effectively. But again, this self-assessment gives you this foundation to what it is that you do well, what skills that you can really market and advertise when you're out there thinking about new types of career options to explore. And in the Imagine PhD setup, they have all of these job families that are common for people in the humanities and social sciences. And what you can do is you can compare your assessments with what experts rate are important in these different career fields, right? So communications here on the top left, consulting the bottom right, you can see that there's a your answer column. These are based on your assessments. And there's an expert rating. When there's a good match, that means that you have the skills necessary to do that. So for writing and publishing here, my skills, my intensive writing and editing, I am a good match for that. For communications and public relations on the bottom right-hand side, I have a not so great match, right? So my answer is 1 in terms of design skills, but the expert rating would say you need probably a 4 in this field to be successful. Now, that doesn't mean I can't do it, but what it does give me a sense of is what skills I may need to focus on if I were to pursue that career or that type of option moving forward, right? So it's giving me a little bit of direction in terms of what that looks like. So you shouldn't see that as a negative that says, oh no, I definitely don't want to choose that. It's an opportunity to evaluate, do I want to gain those skills? Would I find joy in developing those skills? And how would I do that while I'm at Penn? What resources are available for me to gain those skills so that I can market those appropriately? So that was for the social sciences, humanities. There are 2 other tools that are very similar to that. There's MyIDP, which is for STEM PhDs and STEM researchers. There's also the ChemIDP, which is for the chemical sciences, both following the same process of a self-assessment and then an individual development plan that you can use. The MyIDP's tool, again, free to use, both of those are free to use, breaks down the sort of self-assessment as part of this career exploration process. You can see here in terms of what that looks like. And it follows much of the same process as Imagine PhD. Like you have the assessment, and then you can do some exploration based on what you found out, and then you can develop a plan and move forward with that plan. So again, structuring the exploration is very important because it makes it much easier to navigate through once you know what the steps are and where you are in that process. So we definitely encourage people to think about this in a very strategic way. So let me just give you examples of some of the skills, interests, and values that do come up in the MyIDP. So these are skills, right? So these are very science, oftentimes, bioscience is focused a little bit. If you're an engineer, you might still find some value here, but it's meant to be broad enough that people across the STEM fields can find value here. Interest, what are you interested in doing? Are you interested in working as part of a team? Are you interested in speaking about science? Right, so working as part of a team, that may not be, if that's a big interest of yours, there are some fields where you don't really get to do that. And being a faculty member is really one of that. You might have collaborators, but you aren't necessarily part of the team in the way that teams work in other industries, for example. And then values, right? Values are important and they can change over time. What's important to you? Do you want to work in a setting that has security, job security, or in a setting where you're actually making an impact on the world, the planet, on business, on different aspects of it, right? So those are things that can change based on how you understand yourself and what's going on in the world around you, but they can make a key difference in terms of the satisfaction that you have working in different career fields. Much like with the Imagine PhD, I can compare my interest match and my skills match to different roles out there. MyIDP does it slightly different. It sort of rates my job, my interests versus different careers that are out there. So if I take a look at what it said that I should be doing, it said science education and science policy and writing and more education and marketing. These are things that sort of fall off the list of roles that are out there that sort of align with my interests and my skills quite well. Now, sales and marketing, for example, I know myself well enough to know that I don't want to be in a sales role, but marketing is about sort of creative communication. So it's not saying that I should be there. It's giving me an idea of what that might look like and how I might explore that moving forward. So then what it's basically saying to me is I could be any of these things, right? It's saying based on your skills and your interests and maybe some of your values, you could be any of these things. To a certain extent, though, that can be unhelpful because how do I then know which of these things that I want to do, right? So what that allows us to do is to open up the conversation to I could be those things, but what do I actually want to be? What are the things that I want to be able to do with that knowledge so that I can create a plan moving forward? And so from the could and the want perspective, I could because I have the skills and I have the knowledge. I could be I could go into sales because of that, but I don't want to because I don't want to work in that environment. I don't want to engage with people in that way. So the goal of exploration then is to sort of begin to take these ill-defined career paths that are out there, of which there will be many that all of you can do based on your graduate education here at Penn, and turn them into a smaller number of more strategic paths that you want to explore and develop a plan in order to position yourself for, right? And so the process of doing that comes from two different elements. The research that you do, not your academic research, but the research into career fields that you're doing, and the networking that you're doing. They go hand in hand, and we'll sort of talk about how those break out over the next few slides. So what does online research look like then as you're thinking about career options that are out there? Well, one of the questions that you can begin to ask yourself is, well, what have people like me in terms of an academic discipline or a degree? What have they gone on to do with their own careers? This is something that Career Services also is interested in. And so we do a career plan survey of all graduating students throughout the year that is basically a first destination survey, right? What is it that people with these degrees go on to do next? And when did they get that position? And what field were they in what industries do they go into? So on the Career Services website, you can find these career plan survey data for all of these different populations of graduate students over the last 5 or so years that you can take a look at. So if I jump over, let's see if I can do this. There we go. So if I jump over to the Career Services website here, the outcomes here is along the top of the Career Services website. Go to the postgraduate outcomes, this is where we are right now. I can scroll down. If I pick on arts and sciences over the last year, right, we can see that it's broken down, well, we can do that earlier. It's broken down into different areas, master's, PhD. We don't do a survey for postdocs. If you are a postdoc, we don't have a survey for that, primarily because postdocs leave at different times of the year and it's hard to track them down. but you can see where the industries that they're going into. You can see, how many are still seeking. You can see where they got their job offer, where they're located in terms of their geographical location or internationally. And then you can begin to go through, I'm just going to scroll down quickly here, the different programs and see the roles that people have got, right? So the name of the organization, the position title of all of the different programs that fall under these different areas here, right? So lots of ways to sort of begin to explore what people like you have done. Now, those really just represent the well-trodden paths, right? The paths that other people have taken doesn't mean that you need to follow those paths, but it does give you some indication that the skills that were used by people like you are valued down those paths. So it's actually a very helpful tool just to sort of orient you to the landscape that's out there and figure out if there are going to be options for you to explore that, maybe find a connection with an alum who's out there from your program who might be able to give you very key information and very helpful information about the journey that they took and what skills and resources that they're leveraging to be successful in their role. LinkedIn is obviously another great resource to go to look at. And we'll be talking more about LinkedIn in the next two sessions where we talk about job boards and how to sort of leverage this type of alumni tool here. But the reason I'm showing this right now is if you go onto LinkedIn and find the alumni tool, you can also do a search by what people studied. Now, the what people studied column isn't a direct match to Penn majors or degrees. So your specific program may not be in this list exactly, but you're going to find similar programs that you can take a look at. And then you can filter through that 175,000 alumni and current students to see where those people are and what they're doing right now. So again, another great way just to look at the landscape and say, well, what can I be looking at in terms of other people's next steps to sort of figure out what paths that I should follow as well. So for example, if I was looking at people with a public administration background, on the left-hand side here, this is just the total 175,000. You can see that where they work. A lot of people work at Penn. Those are going to be students as well, because that's what they put into their profile. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, these are the big hirers for Penn alumni. When I break down what they study by public administration on the right-hand side, we have 803, which is a much more manageable number anyway. And you can see the where they work has now changed to reflect people with MPAs or international MPA degrees. And so, if these are paths that are of interest to you, you know that there are people out there who you might be able to connect with at some point to learn more about those paths. Or you'll know that if you apply for this type of role, that the employer will know the value that you bring because they have other employees who have a similar academic background to you, right? So it's very helpful to get a sense of what those options might look like for you. As you're looking, and so that list there, when you look on the LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn alumni tool, you can scroll down. You can actually see who those 803 people are in that particular search that I did. And this is just a screenshot of some of those people, and you can see their position title, you can see their organization, you can see when they graduated and what degree that they got from Penn. So this is all great information. At this sort of early stage of exploration, the things that you want to focus on would be, what organization are they working in and what is their position title, right? That's what you sort of want to capture from this at this point in time, just so you can begin to create a sort of a mosaic of the types of opportunities that might exist out there for you. You don't need to connect with these people because they don't know who you are yet. We'll get to that when it comes to networking in terms of what you can do with these people. But right now, just taking those data points out and collecting them is going to be helpful. Another resource that we have on our website are the Vault guides. Vault has been taken over now and is going to be changing their name to Firsthand. So there'll be a bit of cross labeling for a while while that happens. But the Vault guides are really great overviews of different industries that are out there. And if you haven't had any exposure to an industry before, this is a great way to start that. I'm going to put the links in the chat again, so you should be able to find all of the links that I've been pointing to in the box folder. If you have trouble accessing that, then let me know. But every link that I've covered here and every of those resources, you'll find in that link there. So hopefully that helps. The Vault guides just give you that foundational information that you can take a look at that then makes you feel a little bit more informed when you start reaching out and doing sort of networking with people, so that you have that baseline knowledge moving forward. So I encourage you, if you find a career field and you're like, I really don't know what consulting is, start with one of these guides to orient you, because it's a great way, to avoid asking silly questions to people and to promote asking much better questions and more informative questions to people that you might be connecting with in the future. Aurora is another PhD-focused platform that, again, people can use from different degrees. We're not excluding anyone in any way. Aurora is, as you can see here, empowering PhDs to build impactful careers and engage lives wherever smart people are needed. So again, this is a resource that we subscribe to so that you have access to. And one of the great tools on Aurora is their career exploration video library. This is a great way of doing sort of what feels like networking, because you're watching videos of people engaged in conversations about their career fields without actually having to do any of the networking yourself at this point in time. You should be doing it moving forward, and you will be doing it at some point. But early on, what you can do is to really sit in and be a fly on the wall of someone else doing the sort of the question asking for you. What's great about the Aurora platform is that they don't list things by job categories or job functions or job names. They list things by values and interests. So this way, here I did a selection for just consulting and biological life sciences, because that was what I was looking at the time. But you can look through any of those values and interests and decide what it is that you might be interested in. If you're interested in innovation, for example, you can look at all the videos where people talk about innovation being part of their day-to-day work life, right? So that might open your eyes to new experiences out there that you might be able to take a look at. So I encourage you just to watch through some of these videos, because you're going to get a lot of insight without a lot of effort being put in from your perspective in terms of finding these people, because they've already been found and these conversations have already been had. So this is a fantastic resource to take a look at. As part of Aurora, they also have these workbooks that you can download or go through. So discovering your optimal career pathway and evaluating and choosing your optimal career pathway. There are structured exercises and things that you can do on your own. You may even be able to do as part of a peer group. You and a buddy can go through this together. Again, these are a great way of structuring this process so that you don't feel adrift and lost as you're exploring the vast number of opportunities that might be out there for you. I'm going to give you this as an example. I'm not focusing primarily on the STEM fields here, but iBiology is a great resource. It's created just to help spread the word about opportunities in the sort of the field of biological sciences. Any professional association, be it in the MLA or languages or economics or history, right? They all have their own professional associations, and there will be resources similar to this that you can take a look at. So make sure that you are connecting with your professional scholarly association to see what career exploration resources that they have, because there are great ones out there. As an example, iBiology, again, a free resource to use. They have all of these exploration videos talking about different career fields that might be a good fit if you have a biology background. They also have a professional development page, which gives you sort of more skills building resources that are out there. Again, a wonderful resource because it's available all the time at any time for free. And all these resources, are things that you should take advantage of where you can. Another PhD resource, again, not excluding people who don't have the PhDs, the Versatile PhD is another tool that we subscribe to. The Versatile PhD, as its name suggests, is helping PhDs explore roles beyond just the faculty role to see what's out there. So if you have an advanced degree, you can discover interesting career paths when you sign on and set up your free Versatile PhD account. And much like the Aurora and Imagine PhD platforms and the MyIDP platform, it's going to break down the common paths taken by people on the left-hand side in the humanities and social sciences in the blue, on the right-hand side, paths taken by people in STEM fields in the green there. So again, another opportunity to explore these different paths, whether you're a PhD or not, to see what's out there. And what you can find from that are the narratives that people have. So these Q&A sessions are really great sort of ways to hear about people's journey along the way. You can also see for the future resumes that people actually submitted for these roles, so that if you are in the future putting your own application materials together, you can see what other people have done and how they position themselves doing that. So again, another fantastic resource. The stories at the top here, so the long-term electrical engineer becomes trading strategist, right? These are long narratives of people's journey. And sometimes it's just helpful to read that to appreciate the fact that no one has a straight line to their career, right? They've taken a lot of turns and they've had a lot of conversations, they've gained a lot of information. These are the things that you can be doing as well to be successful. As part of the Versatile PhD, they also have a webinar series or a workshop series, a virtual workshop series that you can watch through. Again, going through this whole process that I've been covering thus far, assessing your strengths, understanding your options, and so forth. So, you can always find these types of tools out there to help you. And so if you just want to use one, or you want to sort of gain a great perspective by using multiple, I think that's fantastic. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you have limited time. And so, making sure that you're trying to find the one that you feel like is going to be the best fit for you is great. And we're always happy to give you advice at Career Services if you have questions about that. I should stop because I need to breathe, but you should stop at this point too, because what I've done thus far is I've given you a whole bunch of resources that for some of you may feel slightly overwhelming simply because of the speed at which I've given them to you. And if you were to jump into all of them without sort of a strategy for how to gather the information, it's going to be very overwhelming, right? So what I tend to say is career exploration in your head and even networking in your head gets overwhelming very quickly because everything's just floating around and bumping into each other and there's no clear vision moving forward. So a very simple strategy to avoid that is to find a way, whatever way that works best for you, to create a process, to create a tangible product that you can begin to add to and look at, right? So this spreadsheet here isn't hard to recreate, and I just made it up, but the idea is it allows you to be a little bit more intentional about what information you're gathering from all of these experiences that I've done so far, right? So along the bottom, my tabs, consulting, data and tech, nonprofits. You should be able to gather employers together in different categories based on the different industries that they represent. And then within each of those categories, you can begin to list organizations that you come across through the type of research that I'm doing and the position titles that they list. And if you're looking at information, you can see that they are looking for certain types of skills, then you can list those. And as you come across actual people who may be alumni or in your network, you can begin to list those people too, because eventually those are the people that you might want to start a conversation with as part of your networking. The great thing about these spreadsheets is that the holes, the gaps, the empty cells tell you what you need to do next in terms of your next step, right? So if you're interested in the Nature Conservancy, but you don't know what skills that they value, then one of the things that you can do is find job descriptions or find people and ask that question: what skills are valued in the type of role that you're doing here at the Nature Conservancy? So the gaps are a sort of a roadmap to what your questions should be as you are doing online research or as you're doing networking. So a really great way of giving yourself some structure and keeping this to be a very manageable process and not an overwhelming one at all. This career exploration process can also be thought about in terms of career engagement, right? So exploring, you might be looking at things. Engagement, you're sort of connecting with the paths that you are exploring in slightly more tangible ways, right? So right at the end of this continuum, the sort of the least amount of engagement is obviously reading about things. You're not engaging with that, you're just gathering that knowledge. You don't have to go through all of these stages, but you should engage with, or you should sort of try to have an experience along this continuum to give you more certainty about the types of roles that you might be interested in. So obviously the next step beyond reading about information is actually having conversations with people about that. We have a session tomorrow on networking strategies, especially for introverts, because networking is going to be a key part of what you can be doing to gain knowledge about careers. And it is a form of engagement, right? You're proactively engaging with people in these careers, and that can be so helpful. There are other experiences that you can look for too, right? So we have these job simulations as an example. This is an online resource. It's not pen specific, but it is free for you to use. The Intersect job simulations, take different types of tasks that you might experience in different industries, break those down into a sort of a manageable thing that you can do on your own or as part of a group, just to give you an experience about what that task would look like or feel like. So for example, based on these different industries, clinical trials, entrepreneurship, data analytics, there are many projects that are self-guided projects that are based on real life experiences that people in these fields, or real life projects that people in these fields are actually engaged with. Freelance journalism, intellectual property, medical writing, and journal editing, right? So you can click on any of these projects and get an idea about what that looks like, what skills are used, whether it's something that brings you joy or just makes you feel less joyful about that experience, right? So it's another way of gathering a data point about what you might want to be doing in terms of engaging with these different career fields that are out there. And again, here's some more. So plenty of ways to explore careers in different ways. And once you've gone through one of these experiences, suddenly then you can use that as you're networking with people. You can say, hey, I did this simulation and it felt like this, or I felt like I didn't have enough knowledge of this. Can you tell me more about what that looks like in reality when you're doing this? Do you always have knowledge going into it, or do you have to find that knowledge, very quickly in order to answer these types of questions? So, it gives you more to talk about in your networking and demonstrates to the people that you're networking with that you've engaged in this process. Many employers also offer immersion experiences. They realize that graduate students don't have necessarily 6 months to give for an internship, or postdocs certainly don't, but they have immersion experiences that might be 3-day, 2-day experiences that you can get involved with. So Clearview Healthcare Partners, a consulting firm, has this 3-day advanced degree candidate immersion program where you apply for, and then you get an opportunity to network with employers and engage with them during this process. So it's a competitive process, but a really great way of dabbling your toes and your fingers into a career field to see if that's a good fit for you, with very limited time required from you, because if you're a postdoc, your PI probably doesn't want you away from the lab, or you may have other drags on your time. This is a great way of gaining some of that experience. And we always get these types of announcements from employers who are interested in engaging with graduate students in different ways. The QED Proof of Concept program through the University City Science Center. And this was a Pfizer career engagement day where they wanted people to sign up for. We send these out through Handshake. The way that you can maximize your likelihood of receiving this is when you're on Handshake, go to your profile, click on your photo in the top right-hand corner, click on My Career Interests, and then as you scroll down through those, make sure that you're selecting industries that are of interest to you. When you select these things, it makes it easier for us to make sure that we're communicating with you in the right way, because my team serves a population of about 8,000 students and postdocs. We don't necessarily want to email all 8,000 people with an opportunity, but we will go to these industry preferences here and select those that you've selected. And so we're only sending, for example, consulting experiences to people who may have an interest in consulting. So this is a great way to maximize what you're getting from us and make sure that it's relevant to you moving forward. On-campus and student postdoc groups are a great way of exploring career options whilst also creating a network and finding community all at the same time. So I highly recommend getting involved with that. The pandemic, I think, was pretty rough in some of these groups, so I don't know the current status of those, but if they're lying somewhat fallow right now, you might be able to come in and take a leadership role and bring them back to life in terms of what that looks like. But certainly this is something to explore. So science policy group, if you're interested in policy, for example, that's something you can explore. The Penn Data Science group was very active pre-pandemic with competitions and bringing speakers in. I'm not sure where they are right now, but if you're interested in data science or want to mingle with people who are, this is a great type of group to do that. Penn Biotech, PPG Healthcare Consulting, Consulting Club. There's also the Penn Graduate Consulting Club. And these are just sort of some of the big ones that are out there. There are lots of other associations that you can be part of, but each of these will give you insights into different careers because they tend to be career focused moving forward. Now, if you're a postdoc, the Biomedical Postdoctoral Council has its own set of committees. One of those committees is the Postdoctoral Editors Association, where postdocs help edit the papers of other postdocs. Fantastic experience if you were going into a science writing, medical writing, journal editing, publishing type role, right? You could definitely use that type of experience and put that on a resume if you're applying for those things. So much value from engaging with the community at Penn. Highly recommend that. And yes, there are even internships and fellowships for graduate students and postdocs at Penn. Obviously, master students are much more comfortable with the idea of internships, but even PhDs and postdocs can have opportunities to do that. So if you're interested in intellectual property, the Penn Center for Innovation Fellows might be an option to consider. iBiology, again, has this whole workshop on how to look for postdoc internships if you're a graduate student or a postdoc, right? So lots of information to explore that. Not going into too much detail into all of those aspects. Just wanted to make sure that you're aware of those moving forward. As we approach the end of this particular workshop, I want to touch on networking quickly because it is a key part of this exploration process. There are lots of paths that you can follow through your graduate program and your postdoc program here, but for each of these paths, you won't have all the information and you'll have lots of questions. And the people who have answers to those questions will be those people who are in those roles, people in your networks that are in those roles already. You'll be able to ask those people questions that will be directly relevant to your career next steps. The types of conversations that you're having with people will be very helpful because for many reasons, and sort of I try to capture some of these here. First of all, you can ask them about the skills and the experience and the knowledge that they use in their role. just to confirm that you have those skills, experiences, and knowledge, or to know if there are things that you need to be working on. By listening to people talk about their experiences, you'll also get a better understanding of how they talk about their experience, because that's language that you will want to be using in the future as you apply for those roles, right? You want to take their language and use it to describe your experiences. You're also going to be finding people who can be advocates for you in the future, right? If you network now, early on in the process, by the time you are applying for a role, you may have grown that professional relationship with alumni that you meet or people in your network that you meet, and then they may be better positioned to know your skills and your interests and to be able to advocate for you. And the conversations that you can have with people will help you feel confident about your decision making, right? You can ask people, what is the work-life balance that you experience here? And if everyone tells you in their own way that it's terrible, then that might be a reason not to pursue that career path or that organization moving forward, right? So I wouldn't ask negative questions. Is the work-life balance here terrible? But you might be able to get at some of those answers by engaging with some of the alumni that are out there. So networking, a key part of this process. Again, we'll touch on that tomorrow, also in those sessions starting at 11. Basically, what I want you to sort of, the type of interaction that I think is most helpful are these informational interviews. Those Aurora videos that I showed you are basically recorded informational interviews. You can see how people sort of do that to a certain extent, but this guide that you can download from the Career Services website will also walk you through that process. Networking is beneficial for all of these reasons, right? It's going to help you explore the different options that are out there, the culture of the organizations, the differences between organizations within the same field. But it's also doubly helpful because by doing networking, you're going to have to communicate. You're going to have to share your own narratives, right? So if you're just reading things online, you don't practice talking about your skills and your experiences. And it's going to be so helpful as you think about, creating a narrative for yourself to practice that in every situation that you have. And the more you network, the more you can help others around you, which I think is a fantastic benefit as part of your community of students at Penn or postdocs at Penn. So this process of career exploration then starts very broad. You're opening all these doors, and you're peering in, and you're seeing if what's inside is of interest to you. Over time, again, the sooner you start, the easier it is to do this, you're going to narrow down your focus to a small set of paths that really interest you, that really fit your skills and interests and values. And those will be the ones eventually that you'll be applying for and hopefully that you'll get as part of your job search process.